Welcome to the Frisco Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Ellis, and I'm here today with co-host Nicole Barron. And we are joined by Rodney Britton of Legacy Locators. Rodney, welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody. Thank you.
Good to have you here. We're excited to have Legacy Locators on board because we know there's a lot of people moving to Frisco, a lot of people buying houses, but not everybody needs a house right away, wants a house right away. And a lot of people, if they are eventually going to get into a house, are still going to need someplace to stay in the meantime. And you guys are all about finding people the perfect home in an apartment format.
Right, exactly. We do both sales and rentals, but mainly we do apartment locating. And yeah, we specialize in finding people the best deals out there in the Frisco area.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the properties in Frisco that are maybe things worth keeping an eye on that people should be aware of. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, just start off with why apartment locating. What made Legacy Locators want to get into that particular business? Yeah,
for sure. We are focused on really finding people the perfect home. We saw the huge development that's going on in the Frisco area and just northern Dallas in general, and wanted to help people in that specific area find their perfect home. A lot of people, like you said, may be in between buying a home and doing other things. So we thought that, apartment locating and assisting people in that area would be great. So that's kind of why we started. There's a ton of apartment locating businesses out there. There's a lot of choice for consumers, but we really try to pride ourselves on creating great experiences. So, having a 5-star experience and service experience that people want to come back to us over and over when they are ready to move again. So, can you describe that 5-star experience for us a little bit? So, if I come to Legacy Locators, what makes you different and better than the others that are out there? Yeah, there's some of the bigger apartment locating firms in Dallas, like you're just kind of a number and you get, an initial agent. You don't really have much communication with them. We try to really, from the very beginning, make a very personal experience out of this whole process. It can be really overwhelming. I mean, Frisco's got a ton of new development and apartments being built. So it can be overwhelming for the consumer to sift through all that data to choose the right apartment, and you kind of go within it not knowing what the specials are and all those things. And what we try to do is break it down so that it's very easy for the consumer to see, the great deals out there, what specials are being run, and highlight some key properties that we know and have relationships with that are running great promotional specials for people to get in there. So our whole process is that we, take a consumer when they call and really get what they're looking for, customize their search, and then provide a list of properties that would match that criteria and stay closely in contact with them through the whole process. I always tell my clients that, I'm kind of like their personal administrative assistant through this whole process. Like, they get a personal assistant for free. This is not a charged service. The apartment community actually pays us for our time. So I'm kind of like their personal assistant. I make all the phone calls. I do all the searches. I call once they've chosen their favorite properties. I'll call those properties and find out pricing and availability for them. And then when we've chosen the top 3 places that they want to pursue, I'll even set up the tours. I'll meet them at the properties to help them through that process as an extra set of eyes. And then, being a licensed real estate agent in Texas, I've got knowledge of, leases and those things. So if questions come out through that process of application, I can help them with that as well.
Okay, very good.
That's a lot of services, and it's free, right?
Right, exactly.
That's the really mind-blowing thing. I think that's exactly what people are overwhelmed by, is that it's, like you just said, sifting through all that data and not knowing where the specials are, and meanwhile trying to maybe adjust to a new city and transition your family and go to work, and it's a lot.
That is a lot. So
to have somebody handhold you through that process is huge, and for free.
Right. I know, it's unbelievable. And people really have a hard time in the beginning going, I really don't owe you anything for this, because it's a lot of work on our part to help people through that process.
Sure.
So it's really great.
Well, I can imagine that for people, as many people as are moving into Frisco right now, if you're coming from well outside the Metroplex, maybe even another state, that you're going to come in, you might have a weekend to try to figure out where you're going to live when you first get here. And it's a lot to see. There's a lot to do that you would need somebody like Legacy Locators to take that pool and narrow it down for you and find the handful of places that are right for you so that you can use your time in a more optimal fashion, right?
Yeah, exactly. With all the developments happening with, Toyota and, all these new corporations moving in, State Farm and all of those areas, like you said, to go through all that information is a lot. So we try to make it easy for them.
Yeah, and one of the things I know that Frisco City Council has been very focused on is a variety of types of locations and apartments and things like that. So there are certainly standalone type garden-style apartments. There are different townhomes that are coming online. There are mixed-use properties. And there's a lot of different things to choose from. And I think most people aren't going to necessarily know that those are out there. But from your perspective, what are some of the more interesting, or maybe even, if we dare say, just hot locations around Frisco, things that you guys are seeing kind of come up that you would just broadly say, keep your eye on this?
Yeah, I think just in general, like all around the ballpark, Omley has a great new property out there. All around 121 Stonebriar, and specifically like the Jefferson Stonebriar location, Matt and his team out there are phenomenal. I think what we're seeing a lot of in Frisco specifically is bringing uptown living up north, and people wanting to experience an uptown lifestyle with shopping at their doorstep, going to restaurants and bars without having to drive there. That whole concept is very popular. So I think that Frisco's doing specifically a really great job of bringing that uptown lifestyle to people up north.
I could see that. We have Music City coming, and there's a lot of fun things happening that are being built for that lifestyle. The Star in Frisco, obviously.
Right.
And downtown, we're doing the rail district with a lot of new, lifestyle things down there. And I think that is what people, and I think about myself as just the typical suburban kids, all of that going on. And we love that little feeling of like, we can have some fun too. And up here in suburbia, and it's a little bit of the city life without having to actually leave the bubble and go to the city.
Right.
I think a lot of people are craving that. They want the Frisco life, but they want a little bit of city life too. So
yeah, and so many restaurants and bars that people love downtown and uptown are moving out there as a second location. And I love Emporium Pies, and Emporium Pies are out there.
Common Table is another one.
Table.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of good things coming north. It used to be, when I first moved to Frisco in 2004, I was still spending a lot of time in Dallas. Now it's pretty rare, and I might go just a little south of 121, but I try not to. Except when we come here to RNCN to record the podcast. That's
Legacy
a true
West.
joy.
We like Legacy West.
Yeah, we go to Legacy West in some areas like that. So, one thing I wanted to ask you, as by way of tips or advice for people that are looking for apartments, whether they're coming from somewhere else or not. When someone first reaches out to you and says, okay, I need help, we want to work with you guys to find a place to live, what are the things that they should be most prepared with when they come to you? What would make it easier for you to help them if they already know X, Y, and Z? What are those items?
That's a great question. Because it is overwhelming and a lot of people don't know what all the information that they need to share for us to get started. On our website, we make it really easy. There's a contact sheet, and it's legacylocators.com. And all of our social media and everything directs everyone to that website. And you can fill out a form that basically asks you some generic type questions so that we can get an idea of what the client's looking for. How many bedrooms, what kind of square footage they're looking for, what's their budget range for what they want to spend per month. Do they have pets? Is there a specific school district that they're trying to get their kids in? Like different things that that clients are looking for. And that gives us some specific information to get started. And then always like the time frame. Like, some people are needing to move immediately. Some people are 60 days out, 90 days out, and they're wanting to get an idea of what's out there. So that contact sheet will give us kind of all that information to get us started.
Okay, good. I think most of those are kind of table stakes, basic info. I hadn't thought about the school districts, but I can imagine for those with kids, that's going to be kind of important.
Right, of course.
Especially if you're building. So I know a family that one of our writers, Yvonne, they were moving into a new home, and they really had a target school that they wanted to be a part of. And so they
Right.
naturally wanted an apartment in that same area because school was starting. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's very important to people up north.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Hadn't even thought about that. So that's good stuff.
Yeah.
And that contact form is on the legacylocators.com website.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so we'll make sure we link that up and point people directly there, so that's easy for them to find. Anything else you can tell us about kind of what's happening in Frisco? What are you guys seeing? Just any other recommendations you have, because a lot of our listeners, believe it or not, are in Frisco, but many are also folks kind of on the coast, especially that are coming into Frisco.
Right.
So if you're talking to somebody who's not in Frisco right now, anything that you might suggest to them or that would immediately come to mind if I said, hey, I'm moving to Frisco, I'm coming in with Toyota, I don't even know where to begin.
Right. I think it's really pointing people to what their interests are. If somebody loves sports and loves activities around sports, like getting them close to and around the development that's happening around the ballpark, or if somebody is very interested in shopping and the uptown lifestyle, like pointing them in that direction, like giving them really kind of how they live their life. And what's really great about Frisco is you can get those different areas all in Frisco. All of your interests really can be fulfilled in that area. So,
And there's new stuff coming online all the time.
Right.
How do you guys even keep up with all of that?
well, we constantly are we're listening to your podcast and
Thank you. Great plug.
listening to your podcast, reading Lifestyle Frisco, all of
Appreciate
those
that.
things that are out there really help consumers and people that in my industry and professionals keep up to date with what's going on in that area. So
Yeah, and there's so much of it.
Yeah.
So much of it. So
I was noticing that your Instagram page and your other social media as well is very good, and it's very visual. So if somebody's curious about the kind of properties in Dallas and North Texas, further north, I should say,
Right.
There's some really great stuff out there. People should follow you and just kind of see, exactly what it is you do and what you present to the world, because it's fun.
It is
It's a good way to
fun.
connect with you all.
Yeah, and Hunter does a great job. He's kind of our in-house guy that takes care of all of our social media and does really interesting posts, not only just about communities that are being highlighted in Frisco and around Dallas, but lifestyle type stuff. And we did a recent segment on if you're looking for love. Have you tried changing up your location?
Love
Have you
it.
tried if you're interested in
clever.
finding a professional? Are you living in the right spot to do that? So there's all
That's
kinds of
awesome.
factors that people can take into play for
I
where they
love
choose
that.
to live.
That reminds me of I'm sure there are many, but there's one organization in particular in Frisco called the Frisco Young Professionals,
Yeah.
and they have a lot of fun, social activities that they do, as well as, community outreach and whatnot. But those, and then of course the millennials and all of those, there's
Right.
a lot of people kind of in that 21 to 40 age group moving to Frisco
Yes.
because of the future that they see, probably. Let's go ahead and start life here and eventually have a family and just go ahead. And I think that's exactly what you just described. They would love all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Follow us on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot more. By the way, on social media, I know you guys are especially huge on Instagram, and you get lots of pretty pictures of all the places to live. What is the Instagram account?
Legacy Locators.
Just Legacy Locators on
Yep.
Instagram. Okay.
Love it
We'll
when
get
it's
all this
simple.
contact stuff linked up in the show notes and come back to that in a minute. But with as fast as Frisco is growing, how is it on capacity? I mean, do we have plenty of room if people are coming in needing apartments, or is there a waiting list? Kind of what's happening in the market?
It's funny. Had you asked me that a year ago, I would have said maybe, or 2 years ago. But they have done, as you've residents of Frisco, that there are tons of buildings being built over the last year or two, especially. So currently, yes, there's plenty of inventory for people.
Okay.
A couple years ago, when we were experiencing that and those corporations were in the process of moving here, they couldn't build them fast enough.
Yeah.
But I think now we've got a lot of options for clients.
Okay. Any particular maybe specials or things that we can shout out to give people an inside scoop on?
Well, there's contact us and we can look at because
those things change all the time,
They
don't they?
change literally daily. But I've seen deals in Frisco where you're getting 2 months free, up to 8 weeks free rent that you can prorate. And so if you're $1,600 budget and you get 2 months free, it brings it down to about $1,400 a month.
Okay.
I've seen them give away flat screen TVs or Keurig machines on top of that. Like, there's apartment communities are really aggressive in their approach to wooing like future clients. So there's all kinds of great deals out there right now, especially in Frisco. So the usual promotions that we see are around like a month or two free rent that you can prorate through your lease term.
Okay, that's good to know. And just for people's knowledge, you guys do cover the entire DFW area, right?
We cover all of DFW, yes.
Of course, we only want you to think about Frisco, but
Right,
we know better
right.
than that. You got to
Yes, exactly.
think about Dallas and those other places.
Yeah, we were
shall
even
not be named.
for sure. We were just up in Denton, like helping some UNT students. I mean, we're all over the place.
Okay, good. Which is also would be beneficial in the types of long-term relationships that you guys are trying to build with your customers, because somebody may be at Denton and they're moving out, maybe graduating from UNT. They're looking for an apartment in Frisco because a lot of businesses are moving there, and now they've got a job. And if they've worked with you before, I would imagine they're going to come back to you again and help you find the next right space.
Absolutely. We get a lot of repeat clients that, have had a great experience. And that's really what our goal is to create these experiences for people that, it's a 5-star experience. They get great service. They want to come back, not only when they, lease their next apartment, but when they're ready to purchase their first home in Frisco, like calling us to help them represent them as a buyer's agent. So it really is kind of a great relationship that we try to build so that we can help them with all their housing needs, not just an apartment search.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So people are going to want to get in touch with you guys. What's the best way for them to do that?
LegacyLocators.com.
Okay.
That gives all of our numbers. Everything is right there to contact us. Yeah, that's the best way.
Okay, so hit LegacyLocators.com. We'll link all of that up with your social and stuff in the show notes as well. Fill out that contact form. Give them the information you need. And the next thing you know, you're going to be living in Frisco.
Right.
The perfect
Having
place
fun.
in Frisco.
The perfect place in Frisco, exactly.
Good to know. Well, Rodney, thank you very much. Appreciate you taking some time to come on the show today and talk to us about what you guys do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Do we leave anything out? I feel like, there should be so much more to finding a home, and yet...
Well, yeah, but he covers it all. Apparently, they do it all. So that's the thing. You don't even need to know because he'll make all the calls.
I think people just need to know that, we're here to help them, and they've got a personal assistant waiting for them to help them.
That
with
is
all
like
their
a
process.
dream.
And it doesn't
has to be,
cost anything.
And it doesn't cost them a thing.
So, I think that's what stood out to me. We just published an article about you guys about a week ago.
Yeah.
And that was what stood out to me the most, was the way that you handled through that process and just cover all the bases, and somebody could just wait for you to call.
It's great.
It's awesome.
And before, when I was personally looking for apartments, when I first moved to Dallas from the Boston area, I was overwhelmed at the options. And somebody told me, and I didn't even think of it, to get an apartment locator, and I hired one personally and never not moved without one. So it helps a lot for sure.
Yeah,
awesome.
You guys know the space. It doesn't cost the end user anything. There's no excuse to not call Legacy Locators.
I know.
That's right.
All right. Well, Rodney, thanks again for coming on the show today. Appreciate having you here.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for tuning in to the Frisco Podcast. We'll talk to you next time.
You're listening to RNCN, the digital destination for premium talk radio.